have it.
Hereditary titles, Female Succession Bill, second reading.
Now.
Harriett Baldwin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I beg to move that this bill be now read a second time, even though, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is, I think, my third attempt to get this particular issue to make progress at our end of the House. I really want to end the constitutional sexism that means that an eighth of the seats in the other place are reserved for men only. And can I put on record my tribute to my honourable friend, the member for Shipley, who has also tried to introduce this bill in March 2019. He is a champion of true equality. And I pay tribute to Charlotte Carew-Pole of Daughters' Rights, who helps keep this just cause alive in this place. Indeed, our former colleague Mary MacLeod also tried to bring in a similar bill. So even though this is technically the second reading of this bill, it's not the second time this issue's come up in the Commons, and it will keep coming up until things change.
Will you give way?
I give way.
I'm very grateful to her for giving way, but and also for her kind words. It's very good of her to say that. This has been a long battle, and I just want to place on record my thanks to her for her persistence on this particular issue, and it is a battle worth fighting, and I hope that she will continue to fight for it. Would she agree with me that this is a complete and utter, unacceptable, one of the last bastions of unacceptable discrimination, and that this House should have nothing to do with it any longer?
I thank him for his endorsement, and I do agree, and I think that almost everyone I have met agrees, and I'm going to go through some of that agreement in the course of my remarks today. Because as someone who has had the privilege to be both a Foreign Office Minister but also the chair of the British group of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, I certainly found it hard to meet parliamentarians from other parts of the world and feel that we could say that our unwritten constitution had created a great outcome for women in this Parliament, because we still have this anomaly of the inbuilt sexism. And yet, for over 70 years, our country was graced by a female sovereign who was the perfect embodiment of the benefits of female succession. And that is probably one of the reasons why this place changed the succession to the Crown in 2013. The Succession to the Crown Act in 2013 means that henceforth the firstborn child of Prince George will be in line to succeed him. The Act ended male primogeniture for the Crown, but we left undone any wider reform to make male primogeniture in the United Kingdom a part of history. And as a result, in this very Parliament, now that we're a quarter of the way through the 21st century, we still have a situation where an eighth of the seats in the other place are reserved for men only. I'll repeat it once more, because I find it so shocking. An eighth of the seats in the upper house of this Parliament are permanently reserved for men only, through the system of reserving 92 seats for hereditary peerages. And whatever our views are of the other place or of hereditary peerages more generally, and personally I value the contribution they make and the perspective that they bring, I understand there are other points of view. But one thing I hope we can all agree on is that in 2024, embedded sex discrimination is simply not acceptable. Women are being treated unfairly for no reason other than they are women. It has terrible real-world consequences. In fact, 13% of the land in the UK is owned by women and 87% is owned by men. And boys are twice as likely as girls to inherit their family businesses. If we can't change inequality at the top of our society, we will never be able to change inequality for the whole of our society. And so, put simply, daughters should be treated the same as sons across society. If it's good enough for succession to the crown, it should be good enough for everyone else. The hereditary peerages in the other place should go automatically to the eldest child, something that at the moment very rarely happens. Now, I have listened to many points of view on this topic since I introduced this bill. And I have actually reflected those comments and changed the bill that I have presented today. It is not the same bill as I presented last time. I hoped that by making these changes that I might persuade the government to support it. Clause 1, subsection 1, provides that succession to hereditary peerages only does not depend on sex. I've deliberately narrowed the scope of the bill to focus on peerages because of the constitutional implications as they are eligible to be elected to our upper house. On the register to stand as hereditary peers at the moment, there are 210 people who wish to put themselves forward should there be a by-election. And I understand of those 210 people, only one is female. So as that demonstrates, it is already possible to be a female hereditary peer, but clearly under the current system, it doesn't happen as routinely as it does for men. So unlike my earlier bill, the scope does not cover baronetcies and other titles. In order to address an objection that I have heard that this bill has too wide a scope that would intrude into the private lives of those 1,500 to 1,800 families who would never be in our legislature. So I've done that with some reluctance, but I have done it in order to be able to get the government to support my bill today. Clause 1, subsection 2, phases this in gradually. And again, listening to the comments from people, where there is already an identified male heir in the line of succession, I am proposing in this bill that the change take place at the next point of succession. So it's going to gradually phase in this change. And that's another concession I'm making in this bill to try and get the government's support. Clause 2 makes it clear, again in response to objections I've heard, that this is entirely about the titles and that any decision about wills, property, inheritance is completely distinct from the issue of the title. Clause 4, again addressing an objection that I heard, exempts the peerages and titles that are still held by the Crown. And so I have gone a long way in this new version of the bill to address the concerns that I heard. Because as a Conservative, I stand for equality of opportunity. We should want every person born in this country to enjoy the same chance to make a difference, to thrive, to prosper. And I personally will not give up until this posh glass ceiling is broken. Another concern that I heard raised was, what about their lordships? What might they do if, Lord forbid, this bill should reach the other place? I want to put on record my gratitude to the Earl of Devon, no less, who has agreed to take this bill through the other place. And fortunately, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have some recent comments from Hansard that reflect the mood in the other place, because on February the 9th this year, Lord Northbrook was able to have second reading of his bill entitled Succession to Peerages and Baronetcies Bill. His bill takes a different approach. It would only allow female succession if there wasn't a man available. No comment needed. In his speech, he makes the following point, and this is quoting Lord Northbrook. As I said in 2015, I understand that Section 4 of the Human Rights Act 1998 now makes it illegal to discriminate on the basis of sex where both sexes may perform the function required. This would apply to peerages, and the noble Lord Panic had mentioned to Lord Northbrook at the time that if a legitimate female issue where the peerage would otherwise become extinct referred a case to the European Court of Human Rights, they could well have a chance of success. I would perfectly well understand if some heirs might wish to take this route, end quote. So basically, male primogeniture could be illegal anyway in some cases if tested by the courts. In the second reading debate in the other place, the following supportive points were made about my bill. The Earl of Sandwich said, the campaign for female succession must be encouraged and has had approval, if not support, from within government at a high level. Harriett Baldwin's private member's bill in another place attracted a lot of attention, while, as the noble Earl Lord Russell mentioned, the leader of the Commons referred to this as a posh glass ceiling, words I have echoed. And to continue the quote, even our own noble Lord True, seemed to be sympathetic, though could not actually support the bill. Let us see if His Majesty's government can look more favourably on it this time. Viscount Astor said, And I quote again, Lord Northbrook's bill does not go far enough in removing sex discrimination. It should be a bill that brings the peerage in line with the Crown.
Yeah.
Lord Lucas said, and again I quote, I share the vision that women are equal with men in every respect, and I would very much like to see that applied to peerage inheritance. Lord Addington said, and I quote again, however, if we are going to do this, we should follow the example of the royal family. The oldest child is the only way you can really make this equal going forward. It could be interpreted as an attempt at a small step forward, but it is out of date and out of time. That's the reference to Lord Northbrook's approach. Baroness Noakes was supportive of the way forward for the eldest child to inherit. And of course, Baroness Chapman for the opposition was supportive too. In fact, I have personally contacted every single one of the 92 hereditary peers, and I've not had a single person object. If there are objections, they are very well hidden in the other place. In fact, I've had the following supportive replies. Lord Hampton told me he supports the principle behind my bill. Earl Howe said, I'm very much in favour of the principle behind your bill. Lord Willoughby de Brooke said, I will certainly support it, if only because two of our best monarchs have been queens, and it is absurd that girls are excluded by male primogeniture. So, what are the government's objections, and why are they not supportive of this bill? Because I fear, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I am going to be talked out. Well, many members of the government are supportive, and I'm sorry that the collective decision of the government is not a supportive one, as I think this is a missed opportunity for the government to champion the wider support for women with another step forward.
Well, will she give
We
way?
may hear from a minister today. I give way.
I'm very grateful to her, and I commend her for all the extensive consultation that she's done on this particular issue. And it seems to me that from what she's saying, there hasn't been any logical reason given against the particular measures in this bill, other than self-interest and pure old sexism seem to be the only two possible ways you could oppose this bill. So, given that, can I encourage my honourable friend to keep going with this particular bill, find further dates down the line, during which time, hopefully, we can encourage the government and the opposition to find it in their way to support this bill, and it can be nodded through at a later date.
Such wonderfully encouraging words from my honourable friend, and I do believe that by making the changes that I have to the substance of the bill, that I have addressed any substantive concerns that the government might have. But I have heard that the objection now that it's just too complicated an issue, too time-consuming, basically a faff for which there is not enough parliamentary time. I've also been told that it's not a doorstep issue, not a retail issue, and it's true that very few people would ever raise this with me on the doorstep, and I'm sure colleagues would say the same. But I think it is important because when you do mention what it's about, people immediately understand how pernicious it is if sexism is embedded in our legislature in this way. I give way to the Honourable Lady.
Thank you for giving way. And can I take this opportunity to put on my record the fact that she is doing an amazing job on a really important subject, but it is quite depressing as a relative newcomer to this House to see that in 2024 you are still having to make these arguments.
Well, perhaps 2024 will be the year where these things are finally heard. Because I have heard concerns that this bill could be used as a way to abolish the hereditary peerages altogether, with an amendment in the other place. But actually, the primary advocate of that, Lord Grocott, has assured me that he would not use this bill for that purpose. So I'll conclude my remarks by saying that my only interest in this issue is as a female parliamentarian, the 341st woman ever elected to this place in our nation's history.
On that point, would the Honourable Lady give way?
I will give way.
I'm extremely grateful to the Honourable Lady. To what she's referring is the number of female MPs ever. And I was elected in 2019 and I'm 523. Her experience shows in the number that she attributes to her name. But does she agree with me that there are 650 MPs in this House and we still haven't got to 650 women ever to sit on these green benches? And that's the context that her speech is made in.
Well, I'm encouraged to hear government PPS, no less, making supportive remarks in my debate this morning, or this afternoon now. I do agree with her, and I also want to say, for the record, that I am myself not posh. This does not affect me at all. And I care passionately myself, Madam Deputy Speaker, about equality of opportunity, about girls getting a great education, about women succeeding in the workplace and in their lives, and about achieving a 50-50 Parliament in my lifetime. I give way.
I congratulate my honourable friend on bringing this bill forward. In my constituency of Woking, one of the most distinguished peers that lives there is the Lord Trefgarne, who is, I believe, a long-standing opponent of the proposal that my honourable friend is putting forward. But he's a very agreeable and thoughtful man, and I'm sure he'd be delighted to meet with you to discuss that.
Well, I'm very grateful that someone's found someone who does object to the principle of this bill, because I have not yet had a reply to my inquiry of him. So I will certainly follow up in due course with him. But I really want to end my remarks with an inspiring quotation that I heard this week, which sums up why I'm persisting with this particular issue. Because I was very inspired to hear these words by Nora Ephron, the great US screenwriter. She said, "Whatever you choose, however many roads you travel, I hope that you choose not to be a lady. I hope you will find some way to break the rules and to make a little trouble out there. And I also hope that you will choose to make some of that trouble on behalf of women. So come on, my government. I'll continue to make a little trouble on this subject until you let this bill pass. Or let us agree today that we can make this small and symbolic change for our country's sake and for the sake of equality between future generations of men and women."
Chris Clarkson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Firstly, can I congratulate the Honourable Lady from West Worcestershire for her dogged determination. Sometimes you just have to keep going with these things, and I think she's entirely right. This is a private member's bill which is very much of its time. I think trying to justify to anybody that we reserve a portion of seats exclusively for one sex or the other in either part of our legislature is a sticky wicket to find yourself on. It's certainly not one that I could make a good fist of. Women have had to fight for the same treatment as men, not better treatment, not different treatment, just the same treatment as men at every stage of the way. And it was one of my forebears who was chained to the front of this building with Mrs. Pankhurst, and I'm extremely proud to be able to say that. Sometimes you just have to keep... Will my
honourable friend give way, because I appreciate the supportive tone that he's taking. And can I just also note for the record in Hansard that my honourable friend is a parliamentary private secretary to the leader of the House of Lords. Chris Clarkson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's not the first time I've been outed. The Right Honourable Lady is absolutely right. I spent quite a bit of time at the other end of the building with their lordships. In fact, the current Chief Whip in the House of Lords was my sponsor for my PhD. I will say I am not the child of a peer. I'm not in line to inherit a peerage. The running joke is I have been treating the PPS job as an apprenticeship programme for the past 3 years. However, I do see the immense value of what happens at the other end, in the other place, and the quality of some of the people that we have in there. It is baffling to me that we have a system that's designed to filter that entirely based on the fact you have a Y chromosome. We already reached the determination that our royal family does not need to follow that precedent, and we reached it in conjunction with all the other Commonwealth realms. I also have Canadian heritage, so my monarch twice over, and I'm very happy to know that at some point there will be a Crown Princess or a Princess of Wales who will be the substantive holder of that title. I am very thankful to the Honourable Lady as well for taking back some of the feedback she had on the last iteration of the bill about grandfathering in some of these titles.
Will he give way?
Yes, certainly will.
I'm very grateful to him. Would he agree with me that our honourable friend mentioned that people said it wasn't retail, it didn't come up on the doorsteps? Would my honourable friend agree with me that it doesn't matter whether it comes up on the doorstep or doesn't come up on the doorstep, that as she says, women here are being discriminated simply for the fact that they are women, and that shouldn't stand whether it comes up on the doorstep or not?
Well, the honourable gentleman is entirely correct. The idea that if you went on the doorstep and said, actually, you shouldn't really bother about women being treated differently in any walk of life, that it wouldn't get a reaction, especially from female voters, which, let's not kid ourselves, we certainly rely on this side of the House. It's absolutely bonkers, and I would not be able to justify that. I was quite shocked to hear that the honourable lady was basically told it's a bit too much of a faff to do it. The idea that trying to ensure that everybody in this country...
On that subject, wouldn't the best way to find out if there are any objections in this House to be give this bill a second reading today, send it to the other end, find out what's in that can of worms, and then we can move forward on that basis?
Well, as with many things, the best way in life is to suck it and see, so I absolutely...
Order! Order! I'm truly sorry to interrupt the honourable gentleman and indeed the honourable lady in the middle of such an interesting and important debate, but I am required to do so. Order! Order! Debate to be resumed what day?
Friday, June the 21st.
Friday, June the 21st.